Alright, welcome guys. So, we just finished wrapping up the Hello World program. Let's move into something more advanced. Well, not really that advanced, but yeah. First thing we're going to talk about is comments, what it is, how to create one, and what it's used for. So what is a comment? Well, comments is a comment. It's basically you put comments in your code to explain why you did this, what it does, and to make it more understandable and readable. For example, let's say you wrote your program and like 6 months later you come back to it and you want to know what you did in this part, or somebody else is reading your code, so you want to give them an explanation why you did that, what it does, and just to make your code simpler. So how could we write a comment or make a comment? So there's two ways of writing a comment. We have the simple way. We make two forward slashes, so highlight in green, and whatever you type after these two forward slashes is considered to be a comment. So this is a comment, and that's one way, and we could use it like this. So let's just write hello world, and you could use it here. Let's say display hello world to screen. So we already did that. We already learned about hello world and how to display using cout. Now we learned how to do comments. Not worried, this will not affect your code in no way. It's basically invisible to the compiler. It ignores it. It's just good for you. It gives you an advantage to comment out your code. And the second way is to make multi-line, to span it out in multi-line. So we start by putting one forward slash. We press the asterisk, that's shift and the number 8 key. And you could let's just write whatever. Notice how everything in this whole program turns green. That means it's still a comment. So how do we end this comment? Well, we do the inverse. Alright, we do the asterisk and the forward slash. That is our comments. Notice how it does not. Notice how this text down here is not green anymore, except for just in between these comment notes. So one thing that I do want to go over is a different way to create a new line. Before we learned about the escape sequence, and here's a different, better way. So we do the insertion operators again, and we put end L in our semicolon. This is the same input as last time. Output. So see how the comments had no effect onto the program? Well, end line, it's short for end line, it's much better than backslash n. That's what I'll tell you. It's really good, and it's, I don't know, for me I like using that one. So that's one other way to make a new line. Alright, now that we covered the basics of comments and what they're used for and the end line terminator, or just also end line is included in this IOStream header file. So yeah, you need to use include IOStream and the namespace standard, because it's a standard definition of C++. So now let's talk about the basics of variables. Let's get rid of this. We don't need it no more. And let's talk about what is a variable and how we could create one and what it's used for. So think of a variable as like a storage box. You could store certain types of information in there, and you could retrieve that information later to use it. So how do we create a variable? So we have a basic syntax here. I'll use it in comments. So we have identifier type. Then we have name and semicolon. That's declaring a variable. But how do we put in information and declare it at the same time? We could do that. We put the equals sign. That's called the assignment operator. And in here, we put in the value that matches up with the identifier type. So if it's an integer, we have to put in an integer, a legal integer. If it's a string, we put in a string. If it's a character, we put in a character, so on. So that's our basic sentence. So let's create a basic integer. So keyword, we already own it. Integer, it's int, because we used it right here as our return type for our main function. So let's give it a legal identifier name. So we could use letters A through Z, capital or lowercase. We could use numbers 0 through 9 and underscores. You cannot start your variable with a number, so don't do that. Best way is to make a variable that makes a lot of sense. It's descriptive and explains what value we'll be holding. So let's, for example, create a variable and say in here I number num, and we declared it, alright? And down here let's assign a value, or you could do it on the same. So I num equals 10. And these are two statements, so they're on separate lines and they're both separated. Both are terminated by semicolons, so it's a statement. So now that we created that somewhere in our RAM, let's take that information we have in that variable I num. I used I here to say it's an integer, like a notation. So let's just display using our cout, and this is a little way to display it. Well, this is the normal way. You just type in I num without it being in double quotes. You don't have to have double quotes, because that was a string literal. And let's use our end line. So now let's compile and run this. And notice we get 10, and it waits for us to enter something. Now, that was an introduction to variables. They go in much more deeper into detail, like identifier type and a lot of stuff. There's like so many different types. Even just for the integer, there's a lot of types, like the long, the short, the long, unsigned, signed, and character, and floating, and double. There's a lot of them. So just wanted to go over the int, and I want to go over input a little bit. So let's create a little short program. So input is the opposite of output. Input is where the user enters something with the keyboard or something, and the computer does something with that information that he typed in. Well, in this case, we're going to be storing it to a variable. Let's just say here cout enter a number, and let's create a variable here. Let's create int user num, and the keyword is cin. And instead of using this, we use this, the opposite. These are called the extraction operators. They extract data that was taken and store it into something. So that something will be this user num. So the input will be flowing into this user num variable. Now let's just display a cout. Thank you for entering the value of user num and line. Alright, let's compile and run this. So it says enter a number please. Let's just enter 10. Press the enter key and so yeah, sorry there, I had a little error because I had two CNs, and once I press enter it just basically did that one. So here I introduced you something new, system, and then parentheses, and we enter pause. That's just a command for the console to pause. So it's actually much better, because let's compile and run. Let's enter number 10, press enter, and it says press any key to continue. Well, before that it says thank you for entering the value 10. So if we just press any key, it just exits. We don't have to press enter, so it's much faster. And the rest of the code continues, but for us, that's the end. So that's the basics of input and how you use variables to store information from input. I believe, yeah, that's all I'll talk about in this video. See you next time.